Okay, good morning and welcome to Just Daf It, Daf Yomi Share. We're learning Yevamos Daf Pei, number 80. 80 is a nice number, nice even number. Let's start from the bottom. Vayin Telamad Beis, the last line. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Rav Yochanan. Sorry, go back a second. Hechidam Yisras Chama. What's considered? We mentioned in the Mishnah there's two types of people that are sterile that can't have children. Men. One is naturally, he was born with it. Yisras Chama. Which we'll discuss now. And Rabbi Akiva mentioned someone else's first Adam, someone who was castrated. He was born with the ability to reproduce, but for some reason he decided he didn't want to have children. He was castrated by a person. So the Gemara says, "Hey, let me just come. I'm Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan Kol Shalo, top of Pam and Aleph, Shalra Shachas Bekashruso." Meaning, basically, he was born with this disability that he wasn't able to have children. Manayadinan. How do you know that he can't have children, right? If someone castrates you, you know that he did whatever medically was needed to make sure you won't be able to reproduce. But how do you know if someone's a sris from birth? So the he urinates, and while he's urinating, it doesn't form an arch, meaning it just drips down, more like a woman when she urinates. It drips down, doesn't make an arch like a man. What happens? How do you get a birth defect like this that you're not able to reproduce, that you're not able to urinate with an arch? His mother, while she was pregnant with him, she was baking at high noon. I didn't know it was a problem to bake at high noon. She should be baking, I don't know, in the middle of the night. Vishasi Shikra Marka, while she was pregnant, she's drinking, they say it's a very strong beer. Sounds like actually Maker's Mark. There's a type of, I think it's bourbon. It's an American whiskey. Maker's Mark. I don't think it's Scotch. Is it Scotch? Maker's Mark is Scotch? I don't know. All right. I'm not sure if Maker's Mark is Scotch. Marka, I don't know. She's drinking a strong alcoholic drink while she's pregnant. They recommend you shouldn't be drinking strong alcoholic drinks when you're pregnant. It could lead to this. Amar of Yosef, Hain the Shemana Lamai, the Amar Kol Shemayim Olakoi. I heard about something that happens, a defect happens while the woman is pregnant. Lo Yadana Maini, I didn't know what it is. Now you're telling me I know it's this problem, this birth defect, the child's not going to be able to reproduce. Right? We assess somebody and say he's a Sros Chama, right? We prove that his, we're going to see more Simanim on Daf Peyamid Beis, whether you have to have all of them or one of them, will be a discussion on Peyamid Beis, but let's say he does have valid proof that he's a Sros Chama. Let's say he got better. I mean, it's possible technically that the medical condition should go away. Maybe he got better, right? There's a lot of halachas that apply to a sris. He's not allowed to marry. He has the same status as Psuadaka, Kurashafka. He's not allowed to marry Kal Hashem. He's also, according to one Tanaic opinion, there's no mitzvah of chalitza or yibum. He's patr min chalitza or yibum. According to Rabbi Akiva, I think it was the accepted opinion. So, how do you know maybe he got better in between? Why do you, just because at one time you saw that he didn't form an arch with his urine, maybe later on he did? It's where it says, I guess right now, at the beginning of birth, we examined him, and now we examine him when it comes to a situation. We want to know, is there a construct of a chalitza or yibum? We're not kosher in the middle, he got better. Maybe Rav Mari or Rav Richanina ben Antoninus Omer, Yom. There's a halacha that by a bachor for an animal which is a bachor, has to, if it gets a mum, so it no longer is brought as a korban, the kohen eats it. The mumo, what's considered a mum? It has to be a mukavu. It has to be a permanent blemish. One of the blemishes is white spots in the eye. So when you check it in 3 times within an 80-day period. Check at the beginning and then also in the middle. So why else do we check in the middle? Random times, random drug testing, random stress testing in his life. So the Gemara says, "L'chad aver chashina." For one aver, one limb, the eyes, it's possible that it got better in between. If it would got better in between, everyone agrees it's not called a Sros Chama because Stress chama means from the time he saw the sun, the time he was born, until now, forever, he was never he had the ability to reproduce. If he had the ability to reproduce at one point, he wouldn't be called a stress. Even now, he can't reproduce. So the Gemara says, the kula gufa lo cheshina, for your whole body, something which is a blemish in your whole body that you can't reproduce. The reproductive system is composed of many parts of your bodies, not many parts, but different parts of your bodies, the sac and the ava, the penis. So when it's multiple environments, it actually has to do with your whole body. So we are choshesh, lo cheshin. We don't assume, we're not worried that you got better in between and then you got ruined. Rabbi Elazar Omer Loki. So Rabbi Elazar has a shita. He argues in Rabbi Akiva. He says basically that the sris that the Torah was talking about is sris adam. Someone was castrated, but sris chama would be, there would be chalitza and yibum. Raminu ben esrim shana v'levi shtei saros. The Brayta says he's 20 years old, a man. He doesn't have 2 pubic hairs, right? Yaviu raya shu ben esrim v'hu asris. You have to bring proof that he's 20 years old. Bring his driver's license. He's 20 years old. Lo hivia shtei saros. And he. And once we prove that he's 20 years old and we see he lacks the pubic hairs, so we establish him, we call him a stris. He can't do chalitza yibam. A woman reaches 20 years old and also she doesn't have 2 pubic hairs. Bring in her driver's license via islandess. Local, that's the same evidence. So you see, there's no chalitza or yibam Beis Hillel. Obviously, we're talking about someone who's born like this, right? That's the case here. It's just from birth, right? No heavy shtei sarat. They never even had 2 pubic hairs. Beishamai over Mishai argues in Beis Hillel. Zev b'nei Shmona Asrei. They become a stris or an island at 18 years old. Elazar Omer, he makes a compromise. Zachar k'divrei Beis Hillel v'nekeva k'divrei Beishamai. A male is established as a stris at 20 years old. A woman at 18 years old, which doesn't have pubic hair. And the Jeisham Meheres Lavo is Neaish. Woman is known, obviously, mature faster than men, so you can determine earlier whether she's an islandess or not. I'm a Rabbi Mardukuli, I'm a Shmuel Chazer Bo Rabbi Elazar. So obviously from this price, Rabbi Elazar had to be Chazer Bo. He had to go back, he had to withdraw his opinion, because this price seems to indicate that a stress chama, which we're talking about here, which is similar to an islandess from birth, it's talking about obviously someone that it's talking about someone from birth, and it says no chalitza and yibum, and Rabbi Elazar says stress chama, there is chalitza and yibum. From which one did he go back? He went back from this brayso where he's mentioned this brayso. Rabbi Elazar, he makes his pshara with Beis Hillel and Beishamai. It sounds like he agrees with Beishamai and Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says, Tashma, the time Rabbi Elazar Omer Shus Chama Choletz V'Choletz L'Isha Shkem B'Mina Misrapin B'Alexandria Shem Mitzrayim. They could be healed potentially, even though they were born with the condition of being unable to reproduce. In Alexandria, apparently they had a big biotech company in Egypt, Alexandria in Egypt, where they were constantly making new medical breakthroughs. So it could be healed. So therefore, you see that the real opinion is like Rosh in the Mishnah, that a stress chama could be chol. And this brisa was taught first, and the Mishnah was taught afterwards to correct his opinion. The Gemara says, he really wasn't choser, because that brisa is not a question. This brisa we just brought is not a question. Rabbi Elazar, all he was saying, a pshara can be sold in Shammai, not regarding the halachas of chalitza and yibam. He was just saying that 20 years old for a man and 18 years old for a woman is what establishes when they're ryan onshim. Because when you become established as a stris or an islandess at 20 and 18, according to Rabbi Elazar, you become a gadol and a gadola, right? She's not a gadol and a gadola, she's still a tana until then. Once you become 20 years old for a man and 18 years old, then she becomes a gadola, and you're chayav an onshin, right? You're chayav an onshin at that point. We always say that 20 is chayav an onshin. Here the Gemara seems to say only by stress and islandess. We have to work that out at a different place. So the Gemara says, Itmar, achal chayla. Let's say a person ate chayla, forbidden fats from an animal. Chayav kares reading. And mebein shnei Israeli b'yom echad. From 12 years old and 1 day. Now, are we talking about a boy or a girl? It seems like 12 years old and 1 day is talking about a girl. She gets bat mitzvah at 12. A boy waits till 13. Aben shmona right? When all the both is stressed. Let's say between the ages of 12 and 18, this person ate a chaylev. And then afterwards, they realize that the person's a stress. 18-year-old, they declare them as stress. After 18 years old, this person. We're gonna discuss in a second whether it's a male or female. They have shtei stars, 2 pubic hairs. Rav Amar Nasis Rustam Afreya, but Shmuel Amar Katan Hayavos Shah. Is the person liable for kares? You have to bring a korban chatas for chaylev. Do we assume he's a katan at that point or a gadol? So Rav says once you establish him as a sris, at 18 years old, as a gadol, as a heavy shtei saros, he becomes a sris mafreya, and already at the age of 12, he was a gadol, she was a gadola, and therefore you chayev achatas. According to Shmuel, you're not, because only at 18 years old you become a sris, but not retroactively. And that's enough. You don't have to bring a korban chatas. Now the Gemara says it's a sris, but we're talking about 12 years old. That's for a woman. A sris is for a man. This is going to be talked about in English Ben Sion over here. I'd like to suggest over here. I don't like to change around words and say sris really means islandess. The fact is, that's 12 years old in one day. I have a chiddush to say about that. The reason that a psuadak and krishafka is puzzle kal Hashem is they lack kedushas Yisrael, which only applies to men. Basically, a sris becomes a female. He becomes like a female. Once he's rendered a sris, he becomes like a female. We're also going to have to talk about, the Gemara seems to imply that 20 years old before is the sris. Now we're saying 18. We'll have to talk about that. So the Gemara says, Maskif la Rav Yosef, islandness of Rav Meir Yehila Knas. According to this, right, that we say Rav says Lamafreya, they become a sris, become a gadol, an islandness. Rav Meir says an islandness doesn't get a knas. A knas is for a nara murasa. She was raped while she was in nara murasa. She was engaged and she was in nara murasa. She was raped. She has to pay a big knas, 50 shekel. Masayim zuz, 200 dinarim to her or to the father as a nara murasa. Let's say she's an islandess. He raped her. She was moresa. She was engaged, but she found out to be an islandess, right? So, Lamafreya, we should say at the time when she was 12 years old, between 12 years old and 12 years old and 6 months, which when you become a Gogeris, she was an Amaras. So she should have a Knas once you find out that she developed Simone 2 hairs, 2 pubic hairs. Abaye says that case is different because when a person jumps from develops Simone Sris or Simone Islandess, they jump. When you become an islandess, you skip Naras. You go from a Ketana immediately to a Bulgaris. Skip Naras. There's no parsha of Nara Murasa. She's not a Nara. Amarle, when he heard this, all these beautiful things should be said in my name. Meaning, basically, I agree with what you're saying. We have a Brisa. It says a Sris is not just Ben Sorah Mora. He has to have a full pubic hairs by his penis. He has to have around that area. Here, this Rice explicitly says that an islandess, once she's established an islandess, 20 years old, and she has no pubic hairs, so therefore she becomes a gedola at 20 years old, and she becomes a vulgaris, and even if you want to say according to Rav, it's the Mafreya, but she jumps from Katnus to Bagris, not Katnus to Nairis. Amar Rabbi Abba, Simani Shris Violinus, Ben Shmona, Ein Osin Mehen Maisa, Ashu Ben Esrim, Ben Shmona. Real says that if you develop Simani of a Shris or an islandess, and also an 8-month-old baby, a baby is born 8-month-old, we don't judge them, we don't put a tag on them until they're 20 years old. Meaning, we judge them as a Shris and islandess when they're 20 or 18 for a girl, and they didn't develop Simani good godless. They become a gadol then at 20 and 18. And an 8-year-old baby, until he's 20 years old, is hard to understand. He's not considered a ben kayam. He's not considered someone who's going to live, because we assume a child who's 8 months old is going to die. Let's say the Gemara talks about this. Is it possible for an 8-month-old baby born after 8 months to live? If a child is born after 8 months, we assume it's going to die. It's like a stone. You can't move it on Shabbos. When the mother can bend down, not move the baby, and let the baby nurse from her, because top of Pam and Bez Sakana, it's dangerous for the woman to have so much milk. She needs to get rid of the milk. No, we're talking an 8-month-old baby where the simonim that it should be a ben kayama is going to live finished. The Tanya. What is considered a ben shmona? Is a ben shmona? Its months didn't finish. Most babies are born after 9 months. Rabbi Omer, Simon of Mochichan Alav. Sar of Sipornim Shal Nikum Shal Gamru. You can check the baby out. If its hair and its nails are not finished, they started but they're not finished, like basically very little hair or very small nails, time of the gamru. The reason is because they weren't finished. Ha gamru, but if they were finished, even as born exactly after 8 months after pregnancy, I'm reading Haibar Shevahu. Really, it's a 7-month baby, and a 7-month baby is a viable child. It was just held in the mother's womb for an extra month. So we can assume it's really a 7-month baby and it will live. So that's why you wait till 20 years old to determine whether it's really going to live or not. Like, where's the Alahada Avad Rava Tosfa Uvda B'Ishal Bailam Linas Hayam Ishai Ad Tracer Yacheshasa Achshrei Kaman Karebi. We're going to have to say there was an incident where a woman whose husband went for 12 months to an island. He went on vacation, a business trip, and he left her for 12 months. She gave birth finally after 12 months. So technically you give birth after 9 months. So if he's away for 12 months, we have to assume she became impregnated while the husband was away. It must be a mamzer, this child, someone else. She's married to somebody else. But Rebbe says you don't have to assume the child's a mamzer. You can assume it was a 9-month-old baby. It just waited an extra 3 months in the womb until it was born. That's only Rebbe's opinion. The Gemara answers, Kevin the Ikar, Shem Gamliel, the Amar Mishtai. Shem Gamliel also subscribes to Rebbe's opinion that the child could wait for no reason in the stomach until it's born. Kirabim Avad. It's like majority did it. The sign Shem Gamliel Omer Kol Shashar Shloshim Yom Ba'adam Eino Nefel. He says elsewhere, if a child is born and it lasts for 30 days, it's not an nefel. Even the child is born exactly after 8 months, he learns that this is halacha. Basically, once 30 days pass, we can assume it really is a 7-month-old baby, and it just unnecessarily waited in the mother's womb, so therefore it's a viable child. Taner Rabbanan, Ezehu Sris Chama. What's considered a Sris Chama? That's a source from birth. Kol Shehu Ben Esrim Lo Hevi Shtei Saros. Right? We gave the top of Pam and Aleph, we gave one sim, and now we're going to give some more simanim, more ways of figuring out if he's a Sris. He's 20 years old. He doesn't have 2 pubic hairs. I feel heavy la'achar makan. Even if he reaches 20 years old on his driver's license, and then you see on his 21st birthday he has 2 pubic hairs. Hareyu k'stris. He's still judged as a stris. He's still considered someone incapable of having children. The chol dvarav ve'elohen siman. What's considered a surefire way of knowing if he's a stris? Kol she'en lo zaken. He doesn't have a beard. This is talking about a beard on the face, I believe. Saro lakoi. His hair is very thin. Saro machal, like very smooth skin, like a baby. Another sign is when he urinates, doesn't make a foam. Alternatively, like we mentioned before, he urinates, doesn't make an arch with his urination. His sperm his semen is very liquidy. Another way of figuring it out is normally if you leave urine for a long time, it ferments. His doesn't ferment. Another way of determining, he takes a bath in the winter in hot water, and after the bath there's no steam coming from his skin. His voice has a problem. Basically, there's a problem with his voice, that he sounds like a woman. He has a very high-pitched voice. What's considered islandness? What signs for a woman that she can't reproduce? Here it says 20 years old, and she doesn't have 2 pubic hairs. Even if at 20 and 1 day she brings, she's judged an islandess for all the halachas of an islandess, that there's no chalitza and yibum and things like that. We could assume she can't reproduce. What's considered simaneh? She doesn't have breasts. It hurts her if she's together with a man. She doesn't have a mons pubis, is the raised area above the vagina, above the vulva in a woman. She has a deep voice. She can pass off for a man, not a woman. Itmar. Simon is Sris. Rav Huna Amar Ashu Kulam. Right, we mentioned a lot of different signs of establishing someone as a Sris. You have to have all of them, or just one of them is enough to establish him as a Sris. Rav Huna says you have to have all of them, all the ones mentioned, about 6 or 7 or 8. Only then can we establish them as a Sris. Now, we said that if he's 20 years old and he doesn't have 2 pubic hairs, right, so it seems that's the main criteria, and then it mentions a lot of other ones, like 6 or 7 other ones. The way I'd explain this basically is that if he's 20 years old and he doesn't have 2 pubic hairs, check him. If he has 2 pubic hairs, he doesn't have 2 pubic hairs, so he's deemed a sris. And then, but let's say he does bring afterwards. At his 21st birthday, he shows you I have 2 pubic hairs. So then it's Maklish Rav Huna and Rav Yochanan. You need to prove he's still considered a sris because he has all these other simonim. You need all the signs or not. Rav Yochanan says only one. Which is basically what I'm saying over here. I'm not putting in the word zaken. Zaken would mean the beard, the upper beard on your face. Like the Grut takes it out. 2 pubic hairs. If he brings 2 pubic hairs, like the Brisa seems to imply, all these simanim, you need all 6 or 7 simanim to disprove the fact that he really seems like he's not a stress. In order to prove that he's a stress, you have to have all the simanim. We're talking about where he didn't bring 2 saros. He never showed 2 pubic hairs. So only one or all of them. They asked to find out Rav Nachman. He wanted to give his daughter to Rav Nachman to marry. He said, check out in the winter, he takes a bath. If his skin lets off steam after he comes out of the bath, he only challenged one, and they only wanted one simon. Come on, Rav Huna, must be like Rav Huna. That Rav Huna says you need all of them. You need one of them. Right? You need all of them, right? You need all of them, and once you have even one of the simonim that he's not a stris, that he's a stris, it would be enough. The Gemara says, "Rav Huna lo, Rav Nachman sichi dikni habile." No, the case of Rav Nachman is that he actually had. So they take out the Gra takes the word dikna, so sichi just means hairs, small hairs. It would be referenced like the Gra says to 2 pubic hairs, like we said before. Here, you can't bring a riot to this case. Rav Huna Rav Yochanan did it on Machlokes when he has 2 pubic hairs after his 20th birthday. He has 2 pubic hairs. Everyone agrees you need to have all of the simonim in order to disprove him, in order to say he's not a stris. If he doesn't have 2 pubic hairs, then it wouldn't depend on all the simonim. Even one of the simanim would be enough to render him a stris. Let's do the next line of the Gemara. Kasani stris dumia the island. Stris lachos the island. This is the end of the Mishnah. Kasani stris dumia the island. It compares a stris to an island. My island is b'dei shamayim. A stris b'dei shamayim. Right? An island usually is only if she's born. A woman is born like that. It's hard to castrate a woman, make her reproduce. You have to do a surgery. Forgot the name of it. If you want to make a woman incapable of having children, you have to actually do. You have to cut into her and remove the fallopian tube or something like that. There's a surgery for it. Who's I forgot, it starts with an OO or something like that. Usually an islandess is from Bidei Shamayim. So the stress is also Bidei Shamayim. Mustamak Rabbi Akiva, the Amar Bidei Adamin, Bidei Shamayim. Rabbi Akiva is the one who says a stress that has the same din as a Psua Daka and Kushafka is only talking about a stress that was from birth, a natural stress, as opposed to someone who's castrated. He wouldn't be considered a stress according to Rabbi Akiva because he had Shasa Kosher. It was a time when he wasn't a stress, so therefore he wouldn't be judged of Psudaka Kurshavka, and he could marry the Kal Hashem, and there would be a din of Chalitza and Yibum by a stress Adam according to Rabbi Akiva. So the end of the Mishnah seems to go according to Rabbi Akiva, which I think is how we paskin, that a stress Adam, someone castrated, does not have a din of a stress, only a stress Chama, someone who was born like that. I hope you enjoyed today's share. Stay tuned for Ben C, and we'll talk more about the nature of the stress Chama. You don't want to miss it.